Hey y'all, my name is Delaney. I am here talking about like podcasting and things because 2 years ago tomorrow, I co-founded Classically Black Podcast with my friend and fellow student at the time, Katie. Classically Black is a podcast where we kind of talk about Black culture and classical music and kind of where those two things intersect. We also talk about the experience of Black musicians in the classical music industry, and then also fun things and just kind of everything in between. We kind of um, make it a point to make classical music a little bit more accessible and approachable because that's not really something that a lot of people were making an effort to do, especially for Black people and communities of color. Classical music can seem very much like something that's happening over there and it has nothing to do with us. And in reality, Black and brown people have a lineage in classical music that they deserve to know about. So that's kind of the whole premise of classical music, and we kind of just wanted to create a community of like-minded people as well, which is kind of what we've done through our listeners and also our social media engagement.
Snap, snap, snap. That's why I really enjoy your podcast, especially the what you said about the lineage of classical music and how we are a part of it. And it's just not taught in schools, and so it's like, how do we connect with this? So thank you for doing that work. That's incredible. And I guess just a little bit about me. I am Drew Alexander Ford. I'm from Peachtree City, Georgia, and I'm a professional violist and content creator. And I guess I'm here because I've created a brand on Instagram, That Viola Kid, where I mean, I was like you, Delaney. I was in school. I didn't know what I was gonna do at the end of the road. When you get that diploma, it's not like there's a an internship with Deloitte on the other end of that. It's like, you want to audition for some orchestras for 12, 13 years, you know, so you can get that perfect job in that perfect dream city. You know, they only have like a couple auditions a year. Oh, I'm sorry, a couple auditions a decade. Sorry, the scale was wrong. Joking aside, it's just I saw a big old chasm in front of me, so I decided to look at what was capturing people's attention during that time, right? This was 2013. Smartphones were becoming more and more ubiquitous because even in the early like 2010s, 2011, not many people had the touch screen smartphones with apps. A lot of people still had the flips, a lot of people still had the razor, but then something happened in the mid 2010s where so many people got smartphones, people got into app culture. You saw Instagram go from 100 million users to 500 million users to now like close to a billion now, I think, or maybe even more. I've stopped checking because TikTok is the new thing for me. Uh, but aside from that, I just really saw that if we wanted to create a new audience or to cultivate and bring classical music into the 21st century, we have to use 21st century tools. And so I used Instagram as a tool to tell my personal story as a classical musician trying to figure out his place in the music business. And now I'm kind of figuring out how do I tell that story in a way that's more mature or even more nuanced today. And so that's what I'm working on. So I wanted to talk to you, Delaney, and I guess I'll throw a question your way. When you were growing this podcast, you were in college? Like,
Mhm.
what would, like, so on top of, now, I don't know if everybody here is a music major, but like, music majors don't really have free time. Like, we're notoriously known for that. So, what was your thought process? Like, where did it come from? Why did you want to do a podcast? Why did you want to do it while you were in school? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so something that you've mentioned a couple times about like kind of seeing yourself in the future, like
Mm-hmm.
and other people not seeing that. I actually didn't really have that like foresight. And that was kind of the benefit of having a partnership with Katie, because she's very much like, we can do everything with like whatever we want to do, like, and I'm very much like the, okay, so how do we do that, something that we can maintain,
What are we
you
gonna
know?
do today?
Yeah. But when I was so like when we were first starting, I guess we knew absolutely nothing about podcasting. The only thing that we had ever recorded was like audition tapes, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, there was definitely a learning curve there, but being in school really helped that, because there are a lot of resources that you can use when you're in school. um but I guess, first of all, one thing that was really important was like dedication and consistency.
Hmm.
Especially being in school, it's very easy to cut things that are not giving you an immediate benefit, you know? So if I'm not immediately seeing revenue from Classically Black, or, you know, the streams are not immediately skyrocketing, it might be like, I can just not do this. What am I gaining from it? But like I said, I mean, Classically Black is the actual content of it was something that would have been great for me to be able to access when I was like, even before that, coming up as a musician. So it was beneficial. But also, like, I mean, we don't have free time, and there were a lot of times where we were like, okay, we have to record this episode at 2 o'clock in the morning because um I mean, Monday comes around every week and we have to
Yeah,
put out an episode. So I
facts.
think there was that I guess that aspect of like dedication, and like no matter what, an episode is going out on Monday. Um which, I mean, it's not even something that's new to a lot of musicians, because it's like, you literally, you must be dedicated to your instrument in order
Hmm.
to be a musician. So that's kind of, I guess, where my head was at. Um
Hmm.
throughout the process, and of course it wasn't, I didn't know that it was going to be that level of you know, dedication, because it's like, yeah, you think, yeah, we're going to do a show every week, but I mean, the average episode of Classically Black is an hour and 45 minutes long, and it's not scripted, but it is prepared, you know. So there we do have to outline, especially if we're doing,
Unlike my podcast, yeah. So,
I
thank you.
mean, no, but you guys like
We're just all over the place.
but you do have like a theme. It's not like you're just like, so what are we talking about today, like
Sometimes it is. It's like, I listen to this other podcast that we should all listen to, guys. It's just not good. We're working on it.
but yeah.
But yeah, I resonate with so much of what you said, like the playing the instrument and being used to being consistently frustrated with your results, uh, like and never really hitting the mark the way that you want to, and just getting up and doing it day after day after day after day. That dedication is really tough to build, but once you build it, you can build anything from
Mhm.
that. And I kind of had that same energy. But what I'm really curious to hear about from you is like, so when you are somebody that is building something while you're in school, that's a little different. I'm sure you had some friends and some colleagues and even teachers who had some things to say about that. Maybe some opinions about whether or not it's going to be successful, maybe some opinions as to whether or not you're qualified to do it. So I'm really curious, also as a double minority, an African American woman, like what was that like, and where did you dig to be able to work through that? Like what were some of the things that you were telling yourself to keep moving forward?
You know, we're lucky to have received like mostly good feedback for Classically
Yeah.
Black, but sometimes that criticism doesn't always come in an overt way. It's not always like, ew, what are you doing? Sometimes it's like being overly critical in that, like, you always have a suggestion, and it's, you know, like someone who has nothing to do with your work and doesn't really know much about your work, maybe like, well, maybe you should do XYZ and ABC and all that. And it's just like, you kind of have to develop I guess, confidence that like I know what I'm doing and what I'm talking about, and which is difficult to do as a student because I was a junior in college when we released the first episode of Classically Black. So like I was what? I was 19. So
Wait,
um
you were 19 as a junior?
yeah, I was tired. I'm 19 going on 20.
Still, did you skip a grade?
No, I have a late birthday and I just went like up instead of back. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I
Yeah.
was like, are you a mad genius? Like,
But yeah, so I think kind of developing that confidence, which it helped that Classically Black had that element of like Black culture, because that's something obviously that I have been steeped in.
mhm.
Because one thing that I really think is true about musicians is that we are not, being a classical musician doesn't necessarily lend itself to being confident, because we're constantly in a place of like learning, constantly practicing. We literally go to a lesson every week to hear, to pick apart what
Somebody
we've
just
done.
kick
Yeah,
our butt. Yeah.
to be like, okay, you've worked on this all week. Here's everything you did wrong. Like.
Your
So like,
life's work, this is what I think of it.
yeah. So it's like being a classical musician doesn't really lend itself to being like secure in yourself because it's very like evolving. You're constantly evolving no matter how good you get at it. Um, but I do think I've gotten, both of us, Katie and I, have gotten to a place where it's like I appreciate and I think everyone's opinion matters, but on certain matters, I just don't, I'm not listening to you, like on certain things, I think I do know best for myself. So I think that was
Tell them.
important. Yeah, that was an important thing to kind of like drill into my head.
I had an experience like that recently. I was like streaming on Instagram and I was playing one of the people in the chat had recommended I play Vieuxtemps Elegy, and so I played it just for fun. It's like what? It's like 9 p.m. my time. Like nobody, I'm not tripping, right? And then I play it the way that I felt in that moment, and the way that I kind of believe it's supposed to be played. And there was this guy in the comments who's like, "You should play it all on the G string. That's what Vietton wrote there, right?" And I was like, "I'm almost 30, dude. Can you just
Yeah,
not?" I've
right.
been
First of all,
playing for so long, dude. I did it for a reason, and I think that's part of the frustration. I think is people still think we're students, or people still think that we're like hobbyists at this, that we don't crucify ourselves already behind the scenes with this perfectionism and this like wanting to put our best foot forward. So I really, what I would say to younger viewers maybe watching this who are like high school or just starting to try to figure out how to be confident in yourself, I say that when you create and when you document where you are over and over and over, warts and all, you will build that confidence, because what's going to happen is your ear is going to get better. What's going to happen is that you're going to go back even in a year and look at your old videos and be like, I thought this was okay, because your perception, your growth, it's hard to measure your growth. Oftentimes in what we do, we just shed, go to a lesson and feel bad, shed, go to a lesson and feel bad again. And we don't see the incremental growth. But when you take the chance, because it's hard, it's really uh, mitigating other people's opinions is something that we as content creators who are kind of veterans in the field, like, it's easy for us to say don't care like what other people think, but until you actually start making it, you're never going to build that muscle, and it's always going to be hard. So I would say, if you are just like not sure about what you're going to do, but you want to do something, you want to be a podcaster or an Instagrammer, you just gotta start, and start not with like creating and trying to make the Sistine Chapel of Instagram posts. Just like document something that you're working on. And then even if you don't really do it every day. Maybe if you just do it once a week, you'll still be able to build confidence because you'll be able to go back and see, oh, I've grown. Even in 2 months, I've grown a lot because I've also been recording myself, or I've also been, thinking through this idea for a while. So that is my advice, just as somebody who's been doing this for 7 years now. Ain't that wild?
Yeah. Um, I'm just curious, like when you first started, I know you said you were like documenting things. Was there any, I guess, were there any issues around like balance while you were in school, like in prioritization?
No, not really, because when I made up my mind, it kind of consumed me and nothing else really mattered. Because a lot of people didn't really think that I'd be successful in music, or they kind of were just kind of, how teachers sometimes they have the I'm not so sure kind of attitude, like, is this gonna work out for you? Maybe that's just independent to me, but like I had that experience, and I don't know. I I kind of took that personally, and so I focused on making sure that no matter what I did, was going to continue to get better. Because I didn't get good at this quickly. This took forever, and I'm still not good at. I'm still like, oh, there's so much for me to get better at, so much for me to learn, and I think I just didn't. I didn't really I didn't really understand at the time that you're always going to feel that way. You're always going to feel like you're not prepared, or you're not necessarily comfortable. Because if you're learning, yeah, you're going to be there. Like if you're just learning how to improvise, you're going to feel like a 10-year-old again, So I think that that feeling is actually a really good indicator of whether or not you're going outside of your comfort zone and you're trying to continue to develop. And so I think that sitting in that really helped me. Sitting in that and then documenting it for an audience in a story narrative, putting those two together like really uh, helped me ignore a lot of the other noise.
Mhm. The
I
reason I
never
bring
thought
it
about
up, yeah, the reason I bring it up is because, I mean, and I see that because for you, because I know a lot of it was like playing, you were putting things out into the world in regards to like your instrument, which I mean I commend you because I feel like it's really nobody's business what I sound like.
that.
like uh, like people have been like begging me to live stream my recital. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, it's not gonna happen.
I
Invite them.
mean, yeah, I feel that. Live streaming live concerts, just, I don't know, man.
Yeah, but
I gotta get over it.
right. With classically black, it was like something sort of separate. We were talking about like our lives outside of our instruments, but
Yeah.
also like, in relation to, but it was like very like adjacent.
Hmm.
It helped that we also had a mutual understanding. Like it's not like Katie was like, "Oh, I have to practice or something." I'm like, "Really? Why do you have to practice?" Like we have that.
You trying
Yeah,
to
we
get
have
good?
that. Right. We have to understand like, oh, it's your practice time. Okay, like we won't touch that. But um I want to bring it up because it there's so many aspects of like dealing with like the social media thing, the podcasting thing that directly translate to being a musician and also being a student. When we talked about the consistency part of it, the dedication part of it, and also the prioritization part of it,
Hmm.
are all things that are really really important. But another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on that's specific to being a student is also like asking for help and like using resources around you. Because I read something recently about like entrepreneurship, which is another thing I want to like touch
Yes,
on
please.
in
Yes,
this.
please.
About like how a lot of people see entrepreneurs and think like this is like the lone wolf person that did it like alone, when in reality there's a lot of, you know, the I feel like the people who are most successful at it know when to outsource and know when to ask for help. And that's something that's so easy to do when you're in school. like it seems intimidating to start something when you're in school, but also, like I said, we had never recorded anything that was not an audition tape. So we were like in the technology lab with the guy and was like, so we want to start a podcast. How do you press record? Like, what even is,
Yeah.
anything? And a lot of the beginning of it was finesse. Like, truly, we for the first, I think we started in November. It wasn't until June, I think, that we bought our own mics. Like, we were using our school's mics for a long
Nice.
time. We also, like, our promotional pictures, which I think look great. We bought a camera from our school's student
Yeah.
ID and had our friend and take our pictures at in the library. Like, the library is really
Yeah.
dramatic. We were like, okay, we can see something here. Like, it was a lot of finesse, and I think that
That's
it's
so
it's
industrious.
yeah, it's so it forces you to kind of think outside the box. I think also when you're a student, because like there are limitations, but there's also so many more options within that. So that's kind of just something that I don't know. I wanted to put out there because I feel like a lot of students, like we said, don't have that sort of like confidence and trust in themselves that that's something that they can do. But in reality, like there are things at your disposal and within your reach that you can kind of like turn into things that will work for you.
That is so brilliant. I really wish I wish my younger self would have been able to talk with you, because I developed the chip on the shoulder type mentality, and I was like, I'm gonna do it all myself. I'm gonna do everything. I'm gonna work so hard that nobody wants to come after me, right? It's like I wanted to do everything I could, but that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable at all. And so that's something that I can really uh, pass on to you guys. Is like, yes, you will have young energy for a while, but at some point, you're not going to want to shoot, edit, uh, export, upload metadata, titles every week, like all yourself, and read and practice and figure out interesting topics to talk about and research thoroughly and have a life, be healthy, maybe exercise sometimes, maybe even just like journal. Like there's only so much one can do. So I really want to echo what Delaney has said. Is like you really need to learn how to delegate, especially when there are people who can do even a better job than you at whatever you need done. And that's the key, I think.
Well, speaking of entrepreneurship, I
Yes.
think an interesting thing I think could come out of this session is talking about like social media in classical music and how that has or has not changed classical music, and also how in the sense of like the culture of it, and also like the business side of it, like the career aspect. How has that changed like your career prospects, or like um what what kind of goes into having a successful career as a musician?
Hmm.
um, I'd be interested to know what you think about that.
Well, there are a few things. I think that, like what you said, consistency is really important in any business. Like, if you're gonna make something every Wednesday and people come to start expecting it on Wednesday, you gotta have it on Wednesday. You know what I mean? That goes with any business, because your supply as a content creator is the content. And if people don't know when to reliably expect the content, they're gonna stop looking. They're gonna stop having that Pavlovian reaction, especially if they're a rabid consumer and fan of what you do. So that's like really important to recognize. But I think taking that into your actual career, whether or not it's as a freelancer like me, you wear a lot of different hats, and I think a really big part of your success is making sure that people that hire you feel like it was a really good experience to hire you. You know, at the end of the day, when you get called by a contractor, you get called by a composer of some sort. If you made the experience unbearable. Like they didn't know when you were going to show up because you showed up 16 minutes after downbeat was supposed to be called, or you show up and you're just not prepared, especially if they sent music beforehand, or um, just little things like you're kind of rude to your colleagues. You don't really take criticism well. Like very basic but important essential elements. If you're just a pain to work with, you're gonna have a harder time. And so entrepreneurially, like I think that's a really important aspect to develop when it comes to Instagram. Okay, and when it comes to what it is personally done for me, it's made it to where opening my emails is like it feels like I'm going to battle when I open my emails because it's just do this. Oh my God, my business. Can you promote my product? It's like, whoa, bro, chill, chill, chill. So it's interesting. I think that when you create when you create a story narrative, or you create content that really shows who you are, it gives people a chance to connect with you. I don't know if have you seen BoJack Horseman?
Yeah.
You remember that first season where Diane was writing the book
Mhm.
about BoJack, and he was like he hated it. That is the personification of Instagram and how to be successful on Instagram. What she says about that book, like all the flaws and the warts and the moments where he was awkward. Like one example was when she wrote that BoJack had eaten a lot of the apple fritters so much so, like really quickly, and that he had somebody was trying to talk to him. He snuck a bunch in, and then he like talked, and a bunch of crumbs flew everywhere. Reading that story that out loud in front of the Penguin publisher, he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember one time I did donuts. I had sprinkles all on my face." Like whenever you make mistakes, or whenever you're kind of like less than perfect, it creates an avenue for people to connect with you. To be like, yeah, man, I remember one time when I memory slipped on stage. Whoa. And it shows you're human, and it shows that you're not this person trying to peddle a perfect version of yourself. You care more about the truth. You care more about the storytelling. You care more about the person on the other end. Because at the end of the day, if you're making content and you want to really build a brand, part of it is connecting with other people and showing them that they're not alone. Like we're not alone in this classical music thing, and that's why I love your podcast, because it really does make me feel I'm not the only black person doing classical music. This is dope. Thank you. And speaking on the issues, and talking about the paradox of being black and being in classical music, and figuring out how to see yourself in it. Like I love that you guys talk about all those things. So I think that's the key. That's the key.
Yeah. Well, I mean that kind of reminded me of something that I think is unique about your page, and something that we try to do, but in a little bit of a different way. I think
Yeah.
one of the ways that social media has impacted classical music is that idea of like perfectionism, which has always existed in classical music, because like you're trying to get that shift into, and you're trying to get your vibrato right, like
Hmm.
all of that kind of stuff. But because we now have these platforms where you can like record and re-record, and just and re-record and like all this stuff, like, and put out a perfect or near perfect tape. I think and not just in classical music, but I think that kind of alters people's like perception of reality, and like, oh my gosh, I'm so much further behind everyone else. And I think it's powerful to document that progress as opposed to just documenting the finished product. I think that's kind of a way that I guess your page stands out, from like just a page that posts videos of classical musicians. We kind of like try to make, like, I don't know, like a joke, like, oh, when that memory slip happens, like a meme or something like that on our page. But yeah, I think that's I think that's something that's impacting everyone, not even just in classical music, like just social media and being presented with all these images of like perfection and like trying to figure out where you fit. I do think that authenticity goes a long way with people.
Because you have to remember the algorithms are trying to find the most outrageous stuff
Mhm.
to put in front of your eyeballs to just keep your attention, keep you on the platform. That's its motivation. Like you and your attention is what is being sold. Like that is it.
Mhm.
There's no other game in town. Your attention is the most important thing. So I think that um, we also have to just be cognizant of our presence in the information age and understanding that like what you see on social media, what's peddled to you, is not by accident. It's sent to you on purpose. And so, recognizing that, I really feel like it's my duty to be authentic. Because if people are spending their attention with me, it needs to be something real. It's kind of like you could eat a Twinkie or you could have like a hearty meal, steak, potatoes, asparagus. You know, you can have a nice meal, or you can have a Twinkie. I think content and like the way that we respect people's attention with the content we put out, I think that that's going to be increasingly more important. And even so, for all of you young content creators out in the future, that's going to be a real important parameter for success in the future, I think. Because I think we're going to get tired of the junk. Or a lot of people are going to get tired of junk and they're going to be wanting something real. So go out there and be real.
Yeah. I think too that's something that I guess I've thought a lot about lately because there's also simultaneously there's this like shift in classical music that's trying to be more, I guess, approachable, and in a lot of ways, social media helps with that. But there's also this kind of like shift in the culture of classical music that has to do with the composers that we play, the people that we see on stage, that sort of thing. And I've had to kind of like think about whether or not I think social media is helping that or is it helping it enough. I think we have an opportunity to use it to kind of like push those narratives and those stories to the forefront. I don't necessarily see that in a lot of people's work, but I do think that that's something that really, I guess, highlights authenticity when you kind of come to the table with what you want to see in the future from classical music or from whatever field that you're in. Um, I think that that's something that social media can be a really important like tool for, because it's really easy to connect with people who are like-minded, you know, especially because of the algorithm. Like it's going to like it's gonna
It
put
ain't
them
all
in your
bad.
face. Yeah. It's gonna put them in your face. So I think that's something I've been thinking a lot about because that's something classically black obviously tries to do. But by like highlighting, you know, underrepresented composers and stories and you know experiences. But I think that that's also like if you're looking to document something like, you know, like Drew was saying, then that's something like there's literally no other you. And I think that you know documenting who you are and what you want to see and who you want to be is also like a huge part of being authentic and using social media to your advantage.
I was listening to, first of all, Delaney, I couldn't agree with you more. I didn't want to gloss over what you said, because I think it was really important. Sorry for the weird. I didn't know where to finish that sentence. Uh, what you said really um, it reminded me. So this morning I was doing my ring workout and I was listening to Questlove's podcast with Lin Manuel Miranda. If you haven't listened to Questlove Supreme podcast, it's pretty dope. Highly recommend it. Shout out Questlove. But he had Lin Manuel Miranda on, and one thing that Lin Manuel Miranda was talking about was that feeling of like going to Broadway and and like wanting to create a story that just wasn't on stage. It's like I want to do this, but like with all Latino people or all black people, you know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what Hamilton was for him. It was him telling a story in a way that he always knew it needed to be told, but nobody would really tell it for him. And he said, you need the thing that you have in your head, the thing that you see, you're the only one that's going to make it. Don't wait for other people to make it for you because they won't. Or if they do, they're going to do it wrong. So you're the only one who can make their own thing. And I think at our core, we as humans are creators and storytellers. Just look at kids. Like we come out of the oven ready to just like paint universes. You know what I mean? So I think that uh, reconnecting with that aspect of ourselves as we're going into that authentic push of documentation is those are two key ingredients to really find something unique. Uh,
Ooh, I have a question
yeah,
about authenticity because it just came to me. So
what's up?
what what would you say the balance is, or maybe like what has been your experience with like authenticity but also having a brand? Because I know that brands are not like, it doesn't mean that it's not authentic, but it's a fairly new concept to me. And I mean, that Viola Kid is very much a brand and has been for a long time. No, like I mean, for some,
Oh.
that Viola Kid and they know who you're talking about, like it's a brand. So I'm curious about that because I have thoughts, but I want to hear what
Let
you're
me
saying.
tell you something. I'm just myself. Like I don't know. I don't know. So I think that okay. So the only way, and I said this at Sphinx one time when they were talking when they had me on a panel on it, had me on a panel. Sorry, it's still early for me. It's not even 10 a.m. Sentences are hard. Um, they asked me about brand, and I've always found, and I read this from this book by Dan and Chip Heath called "Why Things Stick," and the example they were talking about was Southwest Airlines, and Southwest Airlines, in order to really create a cohesive brand, used to have what they called was a commanding principle, and whatever they did as a company, the commanding principle was the filter. It's a yes or no question. And so for Southwest Airlines, they asked, or the statement is, we are the low cost airline. So whenever there were suggestions at board meetings about like, hey, should we offer chicken or beef for our cross country flights? The CEO would be like, neither, because we are the low cost airline. If we add food, we're going to have to increase our airfares. So he was always trying to find, like, look, we'll get you there, but it's not going to be like musicians. Musicians, I'm sorry, we don't have food for you, but you're gonna be able to afford going on tour if you fly with us. That was their niche, and that's the part of the market that they sought to build. But the only way they actually really came to that market and dominated that market was having a specific commanding principle. And they centered all of their decisions around that one principle. Personally, my commanding principle was, is this something I would have wanted to see as a middle schooler who was just trying to figure this classical music thing out? If the answer was no, I didn't post it. But if the answer was yes, because my goal was to be kind of like the big brother figure that kind of like gave you tips after rehearsal, that was the vibe that I wanted to create. And so having that picture in my head of what I wanted to create for people really just honed the message and honed the way that I delivered the message. But I mean, what I'm really working on now, and I think what's important for all brands as they mature, is to actually stand for something.
Mhm.
you know. And I think that you with Classically Black are already way farther ahead than I am because all I really did was like, classical music's cool. I promise. Trust me. I'm gonna show you how. Like that's all I got. But there are so many as I get older and as I look at the world and I look to adults to like fix some things. I'm looking around and I'm like, oh wait, I'm an adult now. So what do I stand for? Like, what are some specific things that I could put my life energy behind? So that's the current transition. And I think that any brand that really does well continues to hone in on what they believe in and really driving that home because that gives, once again, people more of a way to connect with you. And we're all so different. Humans are all so different. You're never going to please everybody. You're never going to please everybody. So stop trying. I promise. Like, even if you're a great person and your goal is to make people feel good, people will hate you for that. People will literally hate you for that. Like, I've seen screenshots of people's opinions of me, and they're not good. Like, I've had some vitriol said about me, and I'm like, I just make videos about how to vibrato, dude. Like, I don't know what you have against me. So I think that, and this is the last thing I'm gonna say about this whole brand sort of thing. Um, I'm gonna leave it with something Seth Godin really espouses in Purple Cow, his book on marketing and creating a product that is kind of like a purple cow, just something you look at and you're like, wait, what is that? Huh? A purple cow? How? Right? It's something that's so sticky and so enthralling that you want to learn more about it. He says that like if you make something that everybody loves or everybody needs or everybody wants to use, nobody's going to be really that passionate about it. But if you make a product or you build a brand that caters to a specific audience that solves a specific audience problems and shows that you understand, you are also a part of that audience. You are just somebody who's speaking for the group, right? That changes the whole dynamic. And that's how you really kind of carve out um, a little niche for yourself. Sorry, that was a little bit of Tribes too, by Seth Godin. Uh, so yeah, that's just my perspective on brand, and I just think that if you can have your commanding principle, know what you stand for, and realize that if you niche down and address specific problems for specific people, you will eventually really grow something special.
Yes. I know we have like 4 minutes
Like
left.
4 minutes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe you want to do like last words of wisdom. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And last words of wisdom for me, because I've already spoken too much, and I want to hear more from you, Delaney. Uh, I would just say to never stop learning. Even if you have a degree, like you guys are going to be going into college soon, never stop learning. Even once you get that diploma after the 4 years or even a master's, never stop learning because the world is always changing. There's always more ways to build out your skill set so that if you can't perform live, you can perform virtually, and you just have the ability to roll with the punches. It'll just make your experience as a musician way more secure and way less stressful.
Yeah, I would echo that. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is people who think they can't learn anything. It's just like, okay. But with that, I would also say one of the most beneficial things for me to, I guess, understand has been balance. And there's a huge balance there between like always being in a position where like I can learn something from this, and then no, it all boils down to basically you don't know everything, but you know what you know. So it's like, and I think being confident in the things that you do know, but also being open. and just being open to like receiving information and receiving input. And a big part of that comes from like identifying who's in your corner as well, because like I said, I think everyone's opinion matters, but not everybody's opinion matters to me. So um I think that when I've identified people that I know are in my corner and want the best for me, and I have people who I trust for their opinions, and that's kind of where that learning aspect comes from. Obviously, that bubble can't be too tight because then you're just in an echo chamber. But like, um, I think a big part of being able to learn, especially in a nurturing environment, is identifying who you can learn from. A way to translate that directly to music. When I was in studio class, I had people that like if they didn't speak on my playing, I would go to afterwards and say, "Do you have any comments for me?" Just because
Wow.
there's someone who I admire their playing. I know their personality and who they are, so that's just kind of like a way to kind of translate it to music, just so you can see what that looks like. But yeah, lastly, I just want to say I know we didn't do any questions, but I'm on Hoover. If you want to shoot me a message, I'm happy to answer questions about conservatory
Oh
school.
yeah, we didn't even leave any time for questions. Ah, I'm a bad panelist. No. Oh.
But I mean
60
that's
so we're
yeah.
gonna begin to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here and speaking with me, Delaney. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your input. I feel like I learned a lot. And thank you all for joining us here at Project 40 440. Sorry, with podcasters versus Instagrammers. So hope you guys enjoyed, and you can reach out to me at that Viola Kid on Instagram. Shoot me a DM if I never got to your questions. Would love to speak to you there. And Delaney, where can people find you?
Oh yeah, my you can find me on Instagram either at Classically Black Podcast, or my personal Instagram is at Alani Day. It's just my name in Pig Latin, ALANIEDAY. But yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. It was nice talking to you.
Had a great time. Peace out, everybody.